Boss, he shared myself for years in prison. The maid screams, her voice shattering the crystal glasses in the grand hall. Victor Hale freezes mid-conversation, his face draining of color. The room spins into chaos. Gasped, but Elena Vargas stands firm. This isn't a random outburst. It's the unraveling of an empire built on buried lies. One word from her could topple it all. The air thickens with the sharp scent of spilled champagne, mingling with the heavy perfume of polished mahogany and fresh orchids from the centerpiece. Footsteps echo sharply on the marble floor, like accusations bouncing off gilded walls. Elena's hands tremble at her sides, knuckles white against her simple black uniform. Sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool draft from the chandelier above. Her heart pounds, a relentless drum in the opulent space where tuxedos gleam against velvet drapes. Across the room, a young guest, Sophia Hale, Victor's wife, clutches her necklace, her eyes widening in shock, lips parting in a silent question. But Elena wasn't there for the party's glamour. She was there because 8 years of silence had ended in this moment, triggered by a shadow flickering on the portrait wall. A shadow she knew from cold steel bars and whispered promises. The revelation hits like a storm. Victor, the powerful tycoon, isn't the self-made man he claims. He's the cellmate who betrayed her, leaving her to rot while he stole her life. And now, a suspicious death from their shared past threatens to surface, pulling everyone into the web. Victor Hall lunges forward, his jaw clenched, because exposing his prison history would shatter his boardroom throne and the fortune built on deception. Sophia Hale steps between them, her voice rising in panic because she's hidden her own suspicions of Victor's dark secrets for years, fearing divorce would leave her penniless. Marcus Hale, Victor's ambitious son, forces a laugh from the corner because any scandal now could derail his inheritance, the empire he's clawed for in boardrooms and backrooms. Each of them stands on a knife's edge, gains and losses hanging in the balance of Elena's next breath. But this story didn't begin in the glittering hall. It began 8 years ago, when Elena, a devoted mother wrongly accused, first met Victor in the dim confines of a maximum security prison. That encounter planted seeds of trust that twisted into thorns, layers of identity and betrayal waiting to bloom. The truth isn't simple. It's a maze of forged documents and forgotten oaths. To understand how Elena arrived at this explosive confrontation, you need to know 3 stories. The story of their shared cell 8 years back, where survival forged an unbreakable bond. The story of Victor's calculated escape 2 years later, abandoning her to the system. And the story of a hidden will from just 6 months ago, tying their fates in ways no one saw coming. Everything began on a stormy judgment night. If this shocking revelation already has you hooked, imagine what's next. Subscribe now and hit the bell. Don't miss the epic revenge that changes everything. Your journey of empowerment starts here. 8 years before that shattering scream in the mansion hall, Elena Vargas wakes every morning at dawn, precisely at 5:15 a.m., in the narrow confines of her one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. The alarm clock, an old digital relic with flickering numbers, pierces the quiet like a distant siren. She rises without hesitation, her body moving on autopilot despite the ache in her joints from years of hard labor. At 55, Elena's frame is sturdy but worn, shoulders slightly stooped from carrying trays and scrubbing floors. Her skin etched with fine lines around her dark eyes that speak of sleepless nights. Her hair, once thick and black, now streaks with silver, pulled back into a practical bun that reveals a faint scar along her temple, a memento from a long-forgotten fall. She lives alone in this modest space, walls painted a faded beige, the air carrying the faint mustiness of a building that's seen better days. A single window overlooks a cracked parking lot, where she parks her second-hand sedan, reliable but unremarkable. Elena dresses quickly in simple cotton blouses and slacks, favoring earth tones that blend into the background, practical for a woman who has learned to be invisible when it suits her. Her hands, calloused and steady, prepare a modest breakfast of black coffee and toast, eaten standing at the tiny kitchen counter. There's no rush in her movements, but an efficiency born of necessity. She leaves by 6 a.m., the door clicking shut behind her like a punctuation mark on another unassuming day. In her neighborhood, Elena is known as the quiet pillar, the woman who nods hello to everyone but shares little. Her defining quality is an unyielding loyalty, the kind that once bound her to family and friends through thick and thin, making her the one people turn to in crises. Neighbors recall how she'd organize community meals after storms or listen patiently to tallies of woe without judgment. Yet this strength comes laced with a stubborn defect, a deep-seated distrust that walls her off from deeper connections. She'll help a stranger with groceries but never invites anyone inside her home. Her smile's polite but guarded, as if expecting betrayal at every turn. This duality stems from a life where trust has been her greatest vulnerability. Elena's reputation as reliable masks a wariness that keeps her safe, but also profoundly alone. At work, colleagues appreciate her punctuality and discretion, whispering that she's the type who remembers birthdays with small, thoughtful gestures, a card slipped into a locker. Never extravagant, but probe deeper, and they sense the barriers. She deflects questions about her past with a gentle change of subject, her laugh light but evasive. This blend of warmth and reserve defines her, fiercely protective of those she chooses, yet forever scanning for the crack that could shatter it all. Elena's backstory is a shadow she carries silently, rooted in a trauma that reshaped her world 15 years ago. She was a devoted wife and mother then, running a small bakery with her husband Raul in a bustling immigrant community. Their life was simple but content, till Raul's sudden death in a workplace accident at the factory, leaving her to raise their teenage daughter Maria alone. The real wound came 2 years later. Falsely accused of embezzling from the bakery suppliers in a setup by a jealous competitor, Elena was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The trial was a blur of biased witnesses and inadequate counsel. She lost everything, her home, her business, and worst of all, custody of Maria, who was placed with distant relatives. Those years behind bars built emotional walls thicker than concrete. Isolation bred suspicion, and the loss of her daughter created a chasm of grief she rarely voices. Elena emerged changed, her once open heart armored against vulnerability. She rebuilt in fragments odd jobs, night classes for a cleaning certification, but the scar remains. A quiet rage simmering beneath her calm exterior. Trusting others now feels like handing over a loaded gun. Her loyalty persists, but only on her terms, a defense mechanism forged in betrayal's fire. Deep down, Elena harbors a dream that feels as distant as the stars, an impossible desire to reclaim the dignity stolen from her, to stand not as a shadow in someone else's world, but as its center. She yearns for financial independence, a small house of her own where Maria, now grown and estranged, might one day return without pity. This longing manifests in a tangible symbol, a delicate gold locket engraved with family first that once belonged to her mother. Tucked away in a drawer, it hasn't been worn in years, its chain tarnished but intact. Elena touches it sometimes in quiet moments, fingers tracing the clasp, imagining a life where she's no longer defined by her past mistakes or others' deceptions. It's more than jewelry. It's a beacon of the self-respect she lost in courtrooms and cells, a reminder that redemption isn't just survival but thriving on her own terms. Yet pursuing it means risking the fragile stability she's built, confronting the ghosts she'd rather ignore. For now it remains a private talisman, fueling her resolve even as it aches like an unhealed wound. The heavy iron door clanged shut behind Elena as she stepped into the dim corridor of Blackwood Women's Prison, her first day stretching before her like an endless tunnel. At 40, she felt the weight of the orange jumpsuit more than the cuffs that had been removed moments earlier. The air was thick with the tong of bleach and stale sweat, a far cry from the warm yeast of her bakery. She clutched a thin blanket issued at intake, her eyes scanning the rows of cells for any sign of kindness in this concrete jungle. That's when she first saw him, heard him through the bars of the adjacent wing during yard time. Victor Hale, then a wiry man in his early 50s, serving time for fraud, was arguing with a guard over a smuggled book. His voice cut through the murmurs, sharp and unyielding. Yet there was a flicker of desperation in his stance that mirrored her own fear. Elena paused by the chain-link fence, watching as he backed down with a nod, his gaze landing on her. "New?" he called out, his tone casual but probing. She nodded, unsure. In that brief exchange across the yard, under the harsh fluorescent lights, something stirred. A shared recognition of being out of place, two souls adrift in the same storm. It was the spark of a connection neither anticipated, born from the prison's unyielding grind. 2 weeks later, during the mandatory group therapy session in the prison's multipurpose room, Elena and Victor were paired for a discussion exercise. The circle of folding chairs felt claustrophobic, the fluorescent buzz overhead amplifying every uneasy shift. Elena sat rigidly, arms crossed, while Victor leaned forward, his eyes intense. "What brought you here?" he asked, breaking the ice after the facilitator stepped away. Elena hesitated, the words sticking like dry bread. "A lie," she said finally. "They said I stole from my business. But it was all I had left after my husband died." Victor nodded slowly, his fingers drumming the armrest. "Fraud," he replied. "I trusted the wrong partner. Cost me everything, wife, kids, freedom." A pause hung between them, heavy with unspoken losses. Elena glanced at him. "How do you keep going?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "You don't. You adapt. Find allies. What's your plan out there?" She shrugged. "Get my daughter back. Start over." He leaned closer. "Loyalty's rare here, but it's currency. Stick with me and we'll both make it." Elena met his gaze, a tentative warmth building. "Why me?" "Because you look like someone who won't break easy." Their words wove a fragile thread. The session's timer ticking down as the guard called time. In that hour, barriers cracked just enough for trust to seep in. As the session ended, Alina lingered by the door, Victor at her side. "Promise me something," he said, voice low amid the shuffling feet. "When we're out, because we watch each other's backs. No questions." Alina searched his face, the scar on his cheek catching the light. There was a leap, but in this place of stripped illusions it felt real. "Deal," she whispered. "For my daughter. For your family." They shook hands briefly, the grip firm, sealing a pact that echoed in the empty corridor as they parted ways. That promise became the anchor in Elena's routine. A whispered reminder during lockdown nights, carrying the weight of futures yet unseen. The world Alana inhabits is one of stark divides, where the prison's rigid structure bleeds into the outside society's unspoken hierarchies. Blackwood itself is a fortress of gray stone and razor wire, its corridors echoing with the constant hum of ventilation fans and distant shouts. The scent of overcooked institutional meals lingers in the air, boiled cabbage and faint metal from the trays, while the chill of concrete floors seeps through thin socks. A perpetual reminder of vulnerability. In the yard, gravel crunches underfoot, the sun filtered through chain link casting striped shadows like prison bars on skin. Hierarchy rules here. Guards wield batons with casual authority. Inmates form packs based on crimes or origins, white-collar fraudsters like Victor in one corner, lifers in another. Rules are ironclad, no personal items beyond a Bible or photo. Lights out at 9 p.m. sharp, and trust earned only through silence or favors. Infractions mean solitary, a black hole of isolation that breaks the weak. Beyond the walls, the context shifts to the underbelly of urban reintegration, halfway houses with peeling paint, job fairs that ex-cons with suspicion. Social dynamics favor the connected. Victor, with his charm, navigates both worlds by forging alliances, while Elena, an outsider marked by her Latina heritage and single mother status, scrapes by on the fringes. She fits uneasily, her quiet competence overlooked in favor of flashier survivors. Yet her resilience carves a small space amid the chaos. A woman who bends but never fully yields to the system's grind. Weeks turn to months in the unyielding rhythm of prison life, and the first subtle sign of brewing conflict slipped past Elena like a shadow in the steam-filled laundry room. It was a late afternoon shift, the air thick with the humid drone of industrial washers and the sharp bite of detergent. Elena folded linens methodically, her mind on Maria's latest letter-stilted words from a girl growing distant. Victor appeared at the doorway, his face drawn, clutching a crumpled note from the warden's office. "Transfer rumors," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "They're separating the non-violence. Might split us up." Elena paused, a towel half folded in her hands. It struck her oddly. His urgency felt personal, laced with something unspoken. "We'll manage," she said, forcing calm, but in his eyes she caught a flicker, not of fear, but calculation, as if he were already plotting paths without her. She dismissed it, chalking it up to the paranoia that gripped everyone here. After all, their pact was solid. Still, as he walked away, the note tucked into his pocket, a faint unease settled in her chest, ignored amid the daily grind of counts and meals. It was the first whisper of fracture, buried under layers of shared survival. Then came the mention of the man who would become her unwitting adversary, woven into conversations during evening rec time in the common area. The room smelled of overbrewed coffee from the vending machine, chairs scraping against linoleum as inmates gathered. Victor slid onto the bench beside Elena, his voice low. "Heard about Harlan Crow today? That corporate shark who got pinched for insider trading? Word is he's got connections, lawyers, judges. Might cut a deal soon." Elena nodded absently, sorting through a deck of worn cards for a game. Harlan's name floated around like a ghost. He was the prison's whispered legend, a fallen elite who dined on privileges while others scraped by. "Sounds like trouble," she replied, dealing hands. Victor's tone sharpened. "Or opportunity. Guys like him don't forget favors." The conversation lingered. Victor circling back to Harlan's influence, his ambition glinting like a hidden blade. Elena felt the undercurrent, a man eyeing escape routes, alliances beyond their simple bond. She pushed it aside, focusing on the card's familiar patterns. Harlan remained a distant figure, but Victor's fixation planted a seed of doubt, the first outline of an antagonist emerging from the fog of routine threats. In the quiet hours before lockdown, Elena savored what felt like her last fragile piece. Sitting alone on her bunk with the locket in hand, the cell's single bulb cast a warm glow, softening the bar's cold edges. While the distant hum of the facility lulled like a reluctant lullaby, she traced the engraving, memories of Maria's laughter flooding back, birthday cakes frosted with shaky hands, holidays strung with paper lights. Life outside blurred into this contained world, but moments like this offered solace, a breath before the inevitable storm. Victor's words from earlier echoed faintly, but she willed them away, clutching the locket tighter. Tomorrow would bring another shift, another letter perhaps, and the steady rhythm of endurance. For now, peace wrapped around her like a worn blanket, temporary, precious, and utterly unaware of the gales gathering just beyond the horizon. It was precisely that sworn loyalty, forged in the dim light of prison vows, that would lead Elena, 2 years later, to make the most dangerous choice of her life. 2 years after that whispered promise in the prison's echoing corridor, Elena Vargas stepped through the wrought iron gates of the Hale mansion for the first time. Her resume clutched like a shield against the autumn chill. The estate loomed on the hill, a sprawling monument of stone and glass that screamed old money towers piercing the gray sky, manicured lawns stretching like green carpets underfoot. She had answered the ad for a live-in maid position through a discreet agency that catered to the elite. Her references, glowing but vague, scrubbed clean of her prison record. The interview was a formality. Mrs. Sophia Halle, with her pearl earrings and measured smile, nodded approvingly at Elena's steady gaze and calloused hands. "We need someone discreet," Sophia had said, her voice soft but edged with fatigue. "Mr. Halle travels often. The house. It gets lonely." Elena accepted on the spot. It's the job promising steady pay and a room in the servants' quarters, enough to start saving for Maria's tuition, to bridge the gap that years had carved between them. As she unpacked her single suitcase that evening, the locket glinting in the lamplight, hope flickered. This was a fresh start, or so she told herself, ignoring the faint unease of the mansion's polished silence. But the detonator ignited the very next morning, in the sun-drenched kitchen where copper pots hung like forgotten jewels. Elena was polishing silverware when Victor Halle entered, coffee mug in hand, his back to her as he scanned a tablet. The world tilted. There he was, older, broader in a tailored suit, hair salted with gray, but unmistakable. The scar on his cheek, the sharp jaw from countless late-night talks behind bars. Her breath caught, the cloth slipping from her fingers to clatter on the marble counter. Victor turned, his eyes locking on hers, recognition dawning like a slow poison. "You," he muttered, voice low, stepping back as if burned. Elena's knees buckled against the island, her mind reeling in a torrent of disbelief and fury. How? He was supposed to be out west, starting over as promised Victor Hale, the fraud convict turned legitimate businessman. The betrayal crashed over her. He'd vanished after his early release, leaving her to serve the full term. No letters, no lifeline. Her chest tightened, breaths coming in shallow gasps, tears stinging but unshed as rage boiled beneath. This man, her sworn ally, now lorded over this empire while she scrubbed his floors? The injustice clawed at her throat, years of suppressed grief erupting in silent tremors. Maria's lost childhood, Raoul's grave unmourned, all because he broke faith. She gripped the counter, knuckles whitening, the room blurring as the weight of stolen time pressed down, a visceral storm threatening to drown her composure. How could survival's bond twist into this cruel charade? Victor recovered first, his face hardening into the mask of authority. "Elena? What the hell are you doing here?" Quote. His words sliced the air, laced with accusation rather than shock, as if her presence was the intrusion. Sophia paused in the doorway, tray of pastries in hand, her brow furrowing. "Darling, everything all right?" Guests from the night before, 2 business associates lingering for breakfast, exchanged glances from the breakfast nook, one clearing his throat awkwardly. Marcus, Victor's son, sauntered in then, phone in hand, smirking at the tension. "Dad, who's the help causing a scene?" The room held its breath, forks pausing mid-air as Victor waved them off curtly. "Family matter. Excuse us." But the damage rippled. Whispers started, eyes darting to Elena, who stood frozen, the revelation hanging like smoke. Sophia's hand trembled on the tray, spilling crumbs. The associates shifted uncomfortably, sensing a crack in the Hale facade. Elena's world narrowed to Victor's cold stare, the detonator fully lit, igniting a fire that would consume them all. Elena retreated to the linen closet that afternoon, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and resolve. How did he build this without me? Did he use our stories, twist them into his success? The questions battered her, fears of exposure clashing with the burning need for answers. What if confronting him cost her this job, this fragile foothold? Maria needed the money. One wrong move and she'd be back to temp agencies shunning ex-cons. Yet silence felt like another prison, chaining her to his lie. I trusted him with my soul in that cell, she thought, pulse racing, and he left me to rot. For what? Power? The internal storm raged out, whispering retreat, fury demanding truth. She couldn't just walk away. The locket in her pocket burned like a brand, reminding her of the dignity he'd stolen. After hours of pacing the narrow space, shelves of folded towels mocking her turmoil, Elena made her choice. Confront him tonight, alone. It was risky, but passivity had already cost her a daughter and a life. She smoothed her uniform, steeling herself, the decision a fragile bridge over the abyss. That evening, as the mansion settled into twilight, Elena slipped into Victor's study, the door creaking softly behind her. The room smelled of leather-bound books and aged scotch, firelight dancing on oak panels. Victor looked up from his desk, surprise flickering before settling into irritation. This better be quick. I don't tolerate insubordination. Elena closed the door, her voice steady despite the quake inside. Insolence? After you promised to have my back? I served 2 extra years because you vanished, Victor. Or should I call you by your old name in here? He stood, towering over the desk, but she pressed on. I came for answers. How did you get this life? And why leave me behind? Victor's laugh was hollow, circling the desk like a predator. Survival, Elena. You think prison oaths mean anything out here? I cut a deal. Witness protection, new identity. You were a liability, still tangled in that embezzlement mess. Her heart sank, but she held ground. Liability? We shared everything, plans, fears. Maria lost her mother because of your deal. He leaned in, breath hot. And I lost my freedom first. This? He gestured to the room. It's mine now. Walk away or I'll make sure no one hires you again. Elena's attempt to reason crumbled as he pulled a file from a drawer, her prison records somehow in his possession. Leave now and forget we ever met. The complication hit like a slap. He wasn't just free. He held her past like a weapon, the confrontation backfiring into deeper entrapment. The conflict escalated naturally over the following days, Victor doubling down with calculated cruelty. He assigned Elena the grueling night shifts, scrubbing the mansion's endless halls until dawn. His presence a constant shadow passing orders through notes, his eyes cold reminders of their history. Efficiency, Vargas, he'd snap during inspections, his tone laced with private menace. Sophia noticed the strain, pulling Elena aside in the laundry room one afternoon, the hum of dryers masking their words. He's been off since you started. Is there something I should know? Elena hesitated, the intervention a crack in the facade, but loyalty to her own pain held her tongue. Just work, ma'am. Sophia nodded, unconvinced, her own weariness evident. Victor's bet escalated when he accidentally left a dossier on the kitchen counter photos of Elena's prison intake, slipped where Marcus could find them. The son confronted her in the garage, sneering. Dad says you're trouble. Ex-con, right? One word and you're out. Elena's fists clenched, the intensification turning personal, Victor's arrogance weaving a noose from their shared past. But in the quiet of her room that night, rifling through old letters, a micro-revelation surfaced. A faded note from Victor, dated post-release, promising contact. It was real, 10% of the truth emerging, hinting his abandonment wasn't total accident, but part of a larger deception tied to a family fortune he'd eyed even then. The stakes twisted higher, Elena's resolve hardening amid the storm. Elena delved deeper the next week, sneaking into the attic during a rare free hour, dust motes swirling in slanted light filtering through grimy windows. The space was a tomb of Hale relics, trunks of yellowed papers, forgotten heirlooms gathering cobwebs. Her fingers trembled as she pried open a locked box, heart pounding at the creak of wood. Inside, documents faded but legible, bearing Victor's old name and hers joint appeals from prison, mentions of a shared witness in a corporate fraud case. Then a flash. 8 years back in the stifling heat of the prison library, Elena and Victor huddled over legal books, sweat beading on their brows as they plotted appeals. It's this Harlan Crow case, Victor had whispered, eyes alight. It's connected to my fraud. If we flip on him, Elena had nodded, adding her embezzlement details, their stories intertwining like vines. The flashback cut sharp, 100 words of memory flooding back. His hand on hers, promising partnership, the guards' shout interrupting as they hid the files. Back in the attic, the stakes skyrocketed. These papers linked Victor's rise to Harlan's downfall, implying he'd used her testimony anonymously to secure his new life. But as footsteps echoed below Marcus, perhaps a small defeat struck. She pocketed a single page, but the box snapped shut on her finger, drawing blood, alerting the house. Victor appeared at the attic door, face thunderous, snooping. You're done here. The discovery fueled her fire, but the immediate loss of access deepened the chasm. Victory slipping like sand. The first dramatic turn exploded 2 weeks later. During a lavish dinner party in the mansion's ballroom, chandeliers casting golden pools on silk gowns and tuxedos. Elena served hors d'oeuvres, tray steady despite the knot in her stomach. When Victor announced a toast to his self-made success, the room applauded, Sophia beaming tightly, Marcus preening, guests from high society nodding approval. But Elena, circulating near the head table, overheard Victor's aside to a colleague, all from scratch after that rough patch. Rough patch? The words ignited her. She set the tray down with a deliberate clink, drawing eyes. Rough patch? she echoed, voice carrying, like sharing a cell for years. Mr. Hale? Or abandoning your cellmate to rot? Gasps rippled. Victor's glass shattered in his grip. The revelation detonated. Victor Hale, the untouchable Tycoon, exposed as an ex-con. Sophia's face paled, hand flying to her mouth. Marcus surged forward. What the hell? Shoving Elena. Guests murmured, phones emerging for scandalous snaps. Lies, Victor bellowed, but Elena held a crumpled photo from the attic, their prison intake shot. The room fractured. Sophia wept silently, realizing the business trips masked deeper secrets. Marcus lunged for the photo, only to be restrained by security. The elite crowd buzzed, one woman whispering, I knew he was too polished. Consequences cascaded. Victor ordered Elena's immediate dismissal, but a guest, a journalist, snapped the moment. Viral potential igniting as whispers turned to calls. Elena stood amid the chaos, heart racing. The game utterly changed. No longer invisible, but the catalyst unraveling the Hale empire from within. But what Elena didn't know was that the hidden will from their prison days would change everything. And in the months following, a deeper conspiracy would unfold, pulling long-buried alliances into the light. As she faces betrayal, tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? Seriously, I read everyone and reply personally to those who share a bit of their story. Months after the ballroom bombshell, the mansion's shadows lengthened, secrets festering like wounds under silk bandages. Sophia Hale slipped into the solarium one rainy afternoon, the glass walls fogged with condensation, rain pattering like impatient fingers. At 52, she moved with the grace of someone who'd long ago traded spontaneity for poise, her blonde hair pinned in a chignon that hid trembling hands. The subtrauma of her life ran parallel to the chaos Elena had unleashed, a marriage built on Victor's fabricated past, now cracking under the weight of truths she'd ignored for decades. Sophia had met Victor 12 years ago at a charity gala. Drawn to his sharp wit and the aura of a man who'd overcome adversity, their courtship was whirlwind, lavish trips, promises of stability after her own fractured youth. But whispers followed him, rumors of a disappeared prior life she dismissed as jealousy. Now, post-scandal, those echoes roared. She pulled a hidden diary from a potted fern, pages filled with notes from private investigators she'd hired in secret. One entry detailed Victor's early release, a plea deal tied to testifying against Harlan Crow, the corporate titan whose fraud ring had ensnared them both. Sophia's parallel path, connected directly to the main storm Elena's exposure, had unearthed a letter from Harlan's estate, mentioning a female accomplice in the deal, a woman whose story mirrored Elena's embezzlement charge. Flipping pages, Sophia uncovered new information. Her own father, a minor player in Crow's schemes, had been the one to frame Elena originally, pressuring Victor for silence in exchange for startup capital that funded the Hale empire. The realization hit like the rain's relentless drum. Sophia's wealth was tainted, built on her family's sins and Victor's betrayal. She snapped the diary shut as footsteps approached, her subtrauma intertwining. To expose it meant losing everything, yet staying silent chained her to the lie. In the solarium's humid embrace, Sophia's resolve flickered to lie or accomplice. Her choice would tip the scales for Elena's fight. Elena's full backstory unfolded in fragments that night. Alone in the cramped servants' quarters, the room lit by a single lamp casting long shadows on peeling wallpaper, she sat on the edge of her bed, the locket open in her palm, its photo of Maria faded but fierce. The trauma she'd buried for 15 years clawed free now, no longer containable after the dinner party's fallout. It began with Raoul's death, a factory beam collapsing under faulty wiring, his body crushed while she baked loaves 2 miles away. The grief was raw then, a hollow that Maria's hugs couldn't fill. But the real fracture came at the bakery. Suppliers shorted her orders, cash flow dried. And Harlan Crow's associate, her father's old rival, planted falsified ledgers accusing her of theft. Victor, already inside for his fraud, had been her unwitting link. He'd overheard Crow's men boasting in a bar, tipping her off anonymously, but too late. The trial stripped her bare, judge's gavel echoing like a death knell, Maria's tear-streaked face in the courtroom as social services took her away. Prison arrived as a deeper Helen takes cold exam, the clang of cell doors sealing her fate. There, Victor's presence had been a lifeline, their shared nights plotting appeals. But his abandonment post-release echoed Raoul's loss, amplifying the isolation. Elena's voice broke in the quiet room, a confessional monologue spilling out to the empty air. I thought loyalty was my armor, but it was a chain. Raoul gone, Maria lost. I rebuilt from ashes, only for Victor to scatter them again. How many times can a woman break before she's dust? The walls I built weren't for protection. They were my cage, keeping out the world that judged me guilty before the ink dried. The words hung, 120 of them, raw and unfiltered, her shoulders shaking as tears traced familiar paths. Vulnerability peaked, chest heaving with sobs she muffled into the pillow, the locket clutched like a heartbeat. Then a soft Nakarosa Mendoza, the elderly cook who'd befriended her weeks ago, entered with a thermos of tea. Rosa, 60 and weathered by her own stint for check fraud, sat beside her. "I've seen that look, Mia. The past doesn't define you. It's the fight after that does." Her perspective cut through the fog constellation wrapped in shared scars, urging Elena to weaponize the pain. Use it, don't let it use you. As Rosa left, Elena wiped her face, the moment forging steel from shattered glass. Her deepest secrets now fuel for the battle ahead. From Victor's vantage in the study, the world looked different, scar smoke curling toward the ceiling fan, amber liquid swirling in a tumbler as he paced before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate's darkened grounds. At 58, he was a man who'd clawed from gutters to penthouses, but humanizing him revealed cracks in the villain's armor. His motivation stemmed not from malice alone, but a bone-deep fear of the poverty that had birthed. Chicago tenement boy watching his mother starve while his father gambled away scraps. The fraud charge? A desperate bid to fund a startup inspired by overhearing Crow's deals at a dive bar. Prison had been his crucible. Sharing Elena's cell stories built his resolve. But release brought terror parole officers circling, old associates hunting, stealing the identity, testifying anonymously against Crow. It was survival's brutal math. Flashback to that plea bargain room, fluorescent lights buzzing, lawyer pressing, name the woman accomplice. Get her out. Victor had hesitated, Elena's face in mind, but whispered her details anyway, rationalizing it as cutting ties to rot. Now the Empire Tech Investments board seats felt fragile, a house of cards against the scandal's gale. He poured another drink, muttering to his reflection, "I did what I had to. She was weak. I adapted." Yet humanizing didn't justify. It complicated, showing a man haunted by choices, his arrogance masking regret. The moral snag twisted. Victor had a point in a system rigged for the ruthless. Loyalty was luxury he couldn't afford. But as Elena's exposures mounted, his genuine fear surfaced, losing Sophia, Marcus's disdain, the fortune crumbling. He slammed the glass down, the dimension adding depth. Not monster, but a survivor whose victories came at others' expense. Blurring lines in Elena's quest for justice. The conflict's social ripples spread like wildfire through elite circles, turning the Hale name from gold to gossip fodder. Weeks after the dinner, tabloids splashed headlines. Tycoon's Maid exposes prison past, fueled by that journalist's photo, now viral on social feeds. At a black dye auction, whispers slithered among pearl-clutching socialites. Victor's always been too slick. Ex-con? Figures. One donor, a steel magnate, pulled funding from Hale Ventures, citing reputational risk, his aide texting furiously. Sophia fielded calls from the ladies' auxiliary, voices dripping false sympathy. "Darling, how are you holding up?" Such a shock, but judgments cut deeper. Old friends ghosted invitations. Marcus's fiancé's family demanded prenup clauses tied to the family skeletons. Rumors escalated. The maid's a gold digger, planted by rivals. Pressure mounted externally. SEC inquiries loomed. Shares dipped 15%. Elena felt the weight in stolen glances at the market. Cashiers murmuring, "That's her, the prison woman." Isolation gnawed. Job offers dried up post-mansion. Prejudice against ex-cons amplified by association. Sophia confronted her in the garden, hedges rustling in the breeze. "You've ruined us. Was it worth it?" Elena met her gaze. "Your ruin was built on my pain." The public tide turned sides. Some vilified Elena as vengeful. Others lionized her as truth-teller, but the scrutiny crushed, weighing on her like invisible chains. The sub-trauma of societal judgment forcing Elena to question if justice was worth the exile. An unexpected complication blindsided Elena mid-month. In the dim glow of a public library where she'd sought solace among dusty law tomes, she'd pieced together fragments, a forged will from Crow's estate, naming her as beneficiary to a trust Victor had intercepted during his deal. Hope surged. It could prove her innocence, reclaim Maria's future. But as she photocopied pages, her phone buzzed, Marcus's voice slick. "Meet me, or I leak your daughter's address to the press." The dilemma hit a moral gut punch. Expose the will and risk Maria's safety, or bury it for family peace. Elena arrived at the rendezvous, a foggy park bench, heart hammering. Marcus leaned in, eyes cold. "Dad's will leaves me everything." "Yours?" A footnote. "Walk away or she pays." Desperation clawed. She tried reason. "This isn't about money. It's truth." He laughed, sliding a USB drive across faked emails, painting her as extortionist. "My solution. Sign this NDA or it goes viral. The attempt failed spectacularly. As she refused, Marcus's phone rang Victor, ordering her silence. Security arrived, escorting her out, the drive vanishing into his pocket. The situation worsened. That night, anonymous posts surfaced online, twisting her story into vindictive ex-con stalks Hales. Maria called, voice shaking. "Mom, people at work are asking questions." Isolation deepened, the obstacle not just legal but personal, a dagger to her core, forcing Elena to confront if fighting alone was a path to ruin. The complication layered fresh despair, her resolve teetering on the brink. At the 45-minute mark, as despair threatened to swallow her whole, Elena sat in a dingy coffee shop. Steam rising from untouched espresso, the world outside blurring in neon streaks. The point of highest abandonment risk loomed. Rumors had escalated. Victor's lawyers circling like sharks, Maria distant again. But then, a woman approached. Clara Ruiz, 45, sharp-suited with a briefcase and eyes that pierced. "Elena Vargas? I'm your unexpected ally." Clara, a pro bono lawyer specializing in wrongful convictions, slid into the booth. "I saw the viral clip. And I know about the Crow Wheel. My firm handled his estate peripherally." Victor forged the codicil, but originals exist. The revelation reignited the flame, documents proving Elena's frame-up. Victor's theft of her share trust worth millions from Crow's restitution fund. Clara's help was genuine, sparked by her own sister's prison injustice. "We can sue. Expose the whole web." Hope bloomed, visceral and sudden. Elena's grip tightened on the table, a genuine spark amid the gloom. "Why now?" Clara smiled faintly. "Because women like us don't wait for permission." The Verata shifted everything, not just proof but a partner in the fray, transforming isolation into alliance. As they plotted next step subpoenas, depositions, Elena's eyes cleared. The critical moment pulling her back from the edge. Promise of reckoning burning bright. But Elena didn't know that Victor was already preparing his final ruin. And in mere weeks, everything would crumble. Weeks blurred into a nightmare after Clara's promise in the coffee shop, the air growing thicker with Victor's calculated strikes. Everything Desmeroned a single shattering dawn. Elena woke to pounding on her apartment door, the wood rattling like bones in a gale. Two detectives stood there, badges glinting under the hallway's harsh bulb, their faces etched with procedural indifference. "Elena Vargas, you're under arrest for extortion and fraud." The words landed like blows, cuffs snapping cold around her wrists as neighbors peeked from doorways, whispers slicing the morning fog. Victor's trap had sprung fabricated evidence from Marcus's USB, twisted into a narrative of her demanding hush money from the Hales. Clara called mid-transport, voice urgent over the squad car's radio static. "It's a setup." Bail's denied. "They're painting you as flight risk." Released on her own recognizance hours later after a frantic hearing, Elena returned to find her world gutted. Locks changed on her apartment, belongings strewn on the curb like discarded trash clothes muddied, the locket missing from her drawer. Maria's number went straight to voicemail, a final text burning. "Mom, I can't do this. The press. It's too much." Isolation clamped down, absolute and suffocating. Rosa's calls went unanswered, Clara buried in motions, Sophia silent. Elena wandered the streets, rain soaking her thin jacket, the loss of physical weight pressing her shoulders into the pavement. Despair clawed deep, visceral and unrelenting. Her breaths came in ragged hitches, chest constricting as if drowned, tears mixing with the downpour that blurred streetlights into mocking halos. The injustice surged, a tidal wave, years rebuilding, only to be dragged back in chains. Victor's shadow eclipsing her light. She slumped against a lamppost, body shaking with silent sobs. The world narrowing to the pulse of failure. Maria, gone again, dignity stripped, the fight reduced to ashes in her palms. No allies, no home, just the echo of cuffs and the sting of betrayal's final twist. In the dim confines of a shelter bunk that night, Elena confronted the painful truth she'd evaded for years. The thin mattress creaking under her weight as fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The room hummed with strangers' snores, but her mind replayed the collapse in merciless loops. My own blindness did this. The recognition brutalized, hurt-rusting Victor anew in the mansion, ignoring red flags like his evasive glances during shifts, the way he'd hover near her locker. She'd seen the calculation in his eyes post-dinner party, yet clung to their prison pact, believing loyalty could redeem the past. It was her flaw, that stubborn faith in bonds forged in fire, blinding her to the serpent she'd warmed. Raul's death should have taught her. Men like Victor survived by shedding skins, leaving others to bleed. And Maria estranged not just by prison walls, but by Elena's refusal to sever ties sooner, dragging her daughter into the scandal's crossfire. The internal monologue tore free, unbidden and raw, words forming in the darkness as if confessing to ghosts. I thought I was strong, piecing life from fragments, but it was delusion. Every step forward, I carried him like a shadow, whispering just this once more. Raoul warned me about blind trust before the accident. See people for what they do, not what they say, and I failed. Maria's silence now. That's my echo, the pain I inflicted by choosing vengeance over peace. How did I become the villain in her story, fighting ghosts while she needed a mother? No exit, no light, just this bed, this regret. A woman who built walls so high she trapped herself inside. The system's not the cage. It's me, locking the door every time I let hope fool me into vulnerability. The breakdown crested. 160 words of self-recrimination spilling in whispers. Her fists pounding the thin pillow until knuckles bled. Body curling fetal as sobs racked her frame. The moment stretched endless, no salvation in sight. The truth, a mirror-shattering illusions, point of no return where a failure's weight promised to bury her alive. Dawn brought Rosa Mendoza to the shelter's lobby, her face lined with worry under the scent of fresh-baked cornbread she'd smuggled in a tin. At 60, Rosa moved with the deliberate grace of someone who'd weathered her own storms check fraud in her youth. A decade inside for standing by a wayward son, she spotted Elena at a corner table, eyes hollow, and slid into the seat without preamble. I drove all night, Mia. Clara called, said you vanished after court. Elena looked up, voice cracked. What's left to say? I lost everything. Rosa leaned in, her hand steady on Elena's trembling one, the mentor's perspective cutting through the fog like morning light. Listen, you forget who you are in the dark, but I remember. That woman in prison? She didn't break when they took her daughter. She planned, endured. Victor's playing dirty because he fears you, the truth you carry. Elena shook her head, but Rosa pressed on, voice firm. Recall my story, my boys, strung out, dragged me down. I served time thinking it ended me, but out here I rebuilt, baked for the community, found purpose. Your value's not in what they steal, it's in the fire they can't touch. That locket, it's not lost. It's in you. Fight not for revenge, but for the daughter who needs to see her mother rise. The words wove a parallel to Sophia's subtramarosa, revealing she'd overheard the socialite's confessions to a Maid network, hinting at Victor's forgery, unraveling marriages like hers once did. Sophia's cracking too used that thread. Hope's not given, it's claimed. Elena's gaze sharpened. The seed planted, a reminder of resilience, the mentor's wisdom bridging despair to dawn. As Rosa left with a hug, the shelter's chatter faded. Elena's resolve stirring faintly, the council a lifeline in the abyss. By evening, in Clara's cluttered office overlooking the city skyline, Elena faced the irreversible decision. Papers scattered like fallen leaves on the desk. The air smelled of stale coffee and printer ink, the lawyer's lamp casting warm pools amid stacks of files. Clara paced, outlining risks, the lawsuit against Victor's lander. Fraud, identity theft, it's ironclad with the will originals. But it'll cost. Public trial, media frenzy, possible countersuit painting you as unstable. Elena stared at the documents, the codicil's ink blurring through unshed tears. The cost loomed enormous. Exposing Maria's location for depositions, reliving prison horrors on stand, alienating Rosa with the danger, yet retreat meant surrender, Victor's empire intact on her stolen life. Do it, Elena said, voice stealing. All of it. No half measures. Clara nodded, drafting the filing. Subpoena Victor's financials. Depose Sophia and Marcus. Unearth prison records linking the Crow deal. The plan detailed in clipped efficiency timeline, file by week's end, hearing in 30 days. Strategy. Leverage viral sympathy. Ally with journalists for counter-narrative. Contingencies. Safe house for Maria, if threats escalate. Elena signed, pen scratching like a vow, accepting the toll. Her privacy, her peace. The fragile anonymity of reintegration, as Clara gathered papers. A montage of preparation flickered in Elena's mind. 50 words of resolve. Packing a go-bag with essentials. Memorizing witness lists. Practicing testimony in the mirror. The locket's weight, now a talisman of purpose. The decision sealed it. No turning back. The point of no return crossed with eyes wide open. The crisis forging her into something unbreakable. And it was then that Elena did what no one expected. She filed the suit publicly, igniting the war. The final confrontation was about to begin. And the stakes were her life reclaimed, door lost forever. The courtroom doors swung open under the weight of flashing cameras. Elena Vargas stepping inside with Clara Ruiz at her side, the air electric with anticipation. It was the trial's climax, months after filing. The Hele Empire on trial for fraud, theft, and betrayal. Elena's steps echoed on the polished wood floor. her simple blouse and slacks a stark contrast to the suits in the gallery, purpose clear in her squared shoulders, eyes locked on the plaintiff's table. Clara whispered strategy. Stick to facts. Let the document speak. Elena nodded, settling into her seat as the bailiff called order. Judge Harlan's gavel cracking like thunder. The action unfolded deliberately. Clara rose first, presenting the forged will from Crow's estate. Its pages yellowed, but damning Elena's name as beneficiary to a $5 million restitution fund, intercepted by Victor's anonymous testimony. Your Honor, this proves identity theft and perjury, Clara declared, sliding exhibits across the bench. Victor, at the defense table, shifted, his lawyer objecting furiously, but the judge overruled. Elena took the stand next, voice steady as she recounted the prison pact. The abandonment, her words painting vivid strokes of shared cells and broken oaths. The gallery murmured, reporters scribbling. Sophia averted her eyes from the back row. Marcus scowled beside her. Resistance mounted when Victor's counsel cross-examined. Ms. Vargas, isn't this revenge for a job loss? Elena met his gaze. No. It's justice for a life stolen. Tension peaked as Clara called her final witness, Rosa Mendoza, who testified to overhearing Victor's boasts in the mansion kitchen, confirming the forgery. The detailed actions, 200 words of courtroom theater built relentlessly. Objections flying. Evidence projected on screens, Elena's hands steady on the Bible as she swore truth. Witnesses reacted in waves, gasps from the jury, a reporter's pen snapping, Victor's face paling under the fluorescent glare. His first pushback came via character witnesses, old business associates swearing his reformed integrity, but Clara dismantled them with financial trails linking Hale funds to Crow's laundered money. The room held its breath, tension coiling like a spring. Every objection a spark threatening explosion. Elena's purpose unyielding amid the fray. The emotional confrontation peaked that afternoon. Victor and Elena face-to-face in the hallway recess, the corridor empty save for Clara and a guard posted at the end. Tension crackled, the air thick with the scent of old varnish and coffee from the vending machine. Victor cornered her against the wall, eyes blazing, voice a low hiss. You think this ends me? I built this from nothing. You were just a means. Elena straightened, unflinching, the truths of 8 years erupting in dialogue, raw and unfiltered. You promised we'd rise together, she said, voice steady but edged. That cell nights planning, sharing Maria's letters, your fears of going back to nothing. It wasn't means. It was trust. Victor laughed bitterly, stepping closer. Trust? In there it's survival. I cut the deal with Crow because you were dragging me down. Your embezzlement mess too messy for a clean slate. I testified, got the identity, left you to serve time. Regret? Maybe, but look at me now. Elena's eyes narrowed, fists clenching at her sides. Regret? You stole my name for the plea, forged the will to claim my share. Maria grew up without me because you vanished. Rawls' grave I couldn't even visit. That's not survival. That's cowardice. He leaned in, breath hot. Cowardice? I watched my mother die hungry. Prison taught me cut loose or sink. You were weak. Alana clinging to that locket, your family first. I adapted. This empire? It's mine because I did. Weak? Her voice rose, echoing off tiles. I endured the full sentence, rebuilt without deals or lies. You hid behind a new name while I scrubbed your floors. Admit it. You needed my story to sell to the feds, then discarded me like trash. Victor's facade cracked, shoulders slumping slightly. Fine. The testimony. I twisted your details to bury Crow deeper. Got my out faster. But you could have cut your own deal. Instead, you played loyal. That's on you. Loyal to what? A snake? Elena pressed, tears glinting but unshed. You knew about Harlan framing me, heard his men in that bar. Tipped me off too late, then profited. Maria calls me the con mom now, thanks to your leaks. But was it worth it, Victor? This life built on my ruins? He paused, the hallway silent save for distant voices, his last card playing out. The will? Yeah. I forged it. Crow's fund was leverage enough to start Haley Ventures. But exposure now. Sophia's leaving. Marcus hates me. You win this, I lose everything. A flicker of vulnerability, admission hanging. The Caterus intense as years of guarded truth spilled. Bonds fracturing in the open. Elena stepped back, voice softening but firm. It's not winning. It's reclaiming what's mine. Victor turned away, the guard clearing his throat, ending the exchange. The dialogue to 280 words of pure confrontation left them both raw. Emotional peaks crashing like waves, the air heavier with unresolved pain. Resolution of the main conflict hammered home as the judge reconvened, the courtroom packed tighter, air humming with anticipation. Victor's consequences unfolded swiftly, just and unyielding. Clara's closing argument sealed it. The evidence proves theft of identity, forgery, and abandonment of a co-conspirator. Is Vargas's life derailed for Mr. Hale's gain? The jury deliberated 2 hours, returning with verdicts. Guilty on all counts: fraud, perjury, identity theft. Victor stood, face ashen as the gavel fell. 10 years minimum, the judge intoned, and full restitution to Ms. Vargas. Justice manifested legally. The Hall empire seized, assets frozen. The $5 million trust returned to Alina with interest. Socially, the fallout rippled headlines screamed Tycoon's fall. Prison pact turns to perjury. Emotionally, closure washed over Elena as the will's truth vindicated her innocence. The embezzlement charge expunged retroactively. Witnesses validated her in waves, the jury foreman nodding solemnly. Her story rang true. Sophia approached post-verdict, voice breaking. "You deserved better." "I'm divorcing him, starting clean." Marcus, subdued in the hall, muttered, "Maybe I was wrong." A grudging acknowledgement. Subtraumas closed neatly. Rosa's testimony elevated her community bakery with grant money from the publicity. Clara's firm gained pro bono fame, linking back to her sister's case. Elena demonstrated growth on the courthouse steps, addressing cameras briefly. "This isn't revenge. It's proof that truth endures." Her stance, tall, locket gleaming at her throat, returned via anonymous tip. Likely Sophia, the arc complete, from shadowed maid to reclaimed woman, the conflict's core resolved in cathartic balance. In the quiet aftermath, as sunset painted the city gold, Elena stood on the mansion steps, now hers by court order, recognized and validated by those who'd once dismissed her. Clara arrived first, embracing her tightly. "You did it. The world's watching a survivor now." Rosa followed, tin of cornbread in hand, her laugh warm. "Told you me a fire can't be snuffed." Even Sophia lingered at the gate, eyes soft. "Take the house. It's tainted for me, but maybe redemption for you." Marcus nodded from afar, a silent olive branch, his ambition humbled. Victor, led away in cuffs, glanced back once. No words, just a feet etched deep. The new normal dawned gently. Elena inside, touching the study desk where truths had hidden. The space no longer oppressive, but a canvas. She called Maria, voice steady. "Come home. We've got a future." The celebration was subtlety with allies. Plans for the trust fund turning the estate into a halfway house for ex-cons like Rosa. Sensical of closure settled. Threads tied, but whispers of lingering echoes remained. The victory hard won and profound. But the story doesn't end with victory. Because 6 months later, the long-term consequences still needed facing. 6 months after the courtroom gavel sealed Victor's fate, the mansion on the hill stood transformed, not a monument to stolen power, but a beacon of quiet renewal. Elena Vargas, now 56, moved through its sunlit halls with purpose, the once oppressive walls now echoing with voices of hope. The estate, awarded to her as part of the restitution, had been repurposed into Vargas Haven, a halfway house for women emerging from prison, funded by the $5 million trust plus interest. Elena oversaw it all, morning meetings in the former study, where she'd once polished silver in silence, now a space for group therapy under soft lamplight. Her life had shifted, profoundly gray streaks in her hair styled loosely, a simple gold chain with the locket visible at her collar, symbolizing the family she'd reclaimed. No longer the invisible maid, she consulted with local NGOs, her testimony and Victor's appeal inspiring policy changes for wrongful convictions. Financially secure, Elena donated portions of the trust to scholarships, ensuring no Maria faced the same barriers. Internally, the changes shone through actions. She mentored residents with the same steady hand that once folded linens. Her distrust softened into cautious openness, smiles reaching her eyes more often. The solitude of her old apartment was replaced by communal dinners in the grand kitchen. Laughter filling spaces Victor's arrogance had silenced. Elena's transformation was complete, resilient, not in isolation, but in lifting others. The weight of betrayal lifted like morning fog. Every character found closure in the new tapestry, their arcs weaving back to Elena's triumph. Sophia Halle, 52, had filed for divorce within weeks of the verdict, walking away with a modest settlement to start anew in a coastal cottage. She'd sold her jewels, funding a non-profit for abused spouses. 40 words of quiet reinvention, no longer the poised socialite. Sophia volunteered at shelters, her diary now a blueprint for women's escapes, finding peace in anonymity after years of gilded cages. Marcus Haley, 28, inherited nothing but lessons, his ambition curbed by the scandal's shadow. He took a mid-level job at a rival firm, 40 words marking his path. Therapy sessions unearthed his father's influence, turning cutthroat drive into ethical consulting. A nod to Elena during a chance meeting. "You showed me power without integrity crumbles." Rosa Mendoza, 60, thrived as the Haven's head cook. Her community bakery expanded with a grant from the publicity. 40 words of her flourish. Baking classes for residents healed old wounds. Her son reconciled after seeing her strength. Rosa's laugh now a daily staple, proving second chances multiply. Clara Ruiz, 45, parlayed the case into firm leadership, specializing in restitution suits. 40 words of her assent. Her sister's memory honored through pro bono win. Clara mentoring Elena in board meetings, their alliance a pillar of the Haven's legal shield. Even Victor, from his cell, sent a single letter, opened by Elena, but its existence a final thread closed, his empire dust, consequences permanent. Subtraumas resolved fully. The Crow forgery unraveled in federal probes. Harlan's remnants redistributed. Sophia's family's secrets aired in memoirs, freeing her lineage. Marcus's betrayal arc ended in restitution payments to victims. All tied by Kalena's fight, not just personal, but a ripple restoring balances long skewed. In the mansion's garden, now blooming with wildflowers where manicured lawns once reigned, Elena sat on a weathered bench, the late afternoon sun warming her face. It was a symbolic scene, mirroring the chaos of that first scream 6 months prior, then the hall's marble cold under chaos. Now, earth soft and alive. Maria, 25, approached, her steps light on the gravel path, a tentative smile breaking through. "Mom," she said, sitting close, "the Haven's incredible. I'm staying. Helping with admin." Elena touched the locket, callback direct. "Remember when I screamed in this house? Thought it was the end." Maria nodded, eyes misty. "It was our beginning. You fought for us. For me." Their dialogue, 60 words of essence. "I was scared you'd hate the scars," Elena admitted. "Never," Maria replied. "You taught me strength isn't hiding pain. It's turning it to light." An image poetic unfolded, the flowers nodding in breeze, symbolizing Elena's rebirth. Thorns pruned but roots deep. Emotion genuine, restrained. A shared silence, hands clasped. The garden's hum affirming transformation without fanfare. The narrator's voice turns reflective, connecting Elena's arc to universal truths. In stories like hers, resilience isn't a flash, it's the quiet rebuild after betrayal's storm. For women who've carried invisible prisons of doubt or loss, Elena's path whispers, truth, once buried, blooms into justice. The impact lingers, not in vengeance, but in legacies that outlast empires, proving that reclaiming one's story empowers generations. Hope infuses every step forward, a reminder that broken chains forge stronger paths, turning personal battles into shared victory. And you? Have you ever trusted someone who betrayed you in your darkest hour? Have you rebuilt from the ashes of an unjust fall? Share your experience in the comments below. Your words could be the spark another woman needs to rise today. Subscribe for more. Hit like if this moved you. Remember, silence chains us, but truth sets us free. See you soon.